This is a second in a video on support team orientation, things that all support team members should know as you begin to be on a support team. And in our last video, we just mentioned the three areas that we are going to cover, at least these three, and we might divide up the second one into two parts. But the first one has to do with understanding the team approach. This video will focus on how to offer emotional support. Spiritual support is another area that we often offer by being on a support team. And then thirdly, what are our boundaries? But let's focus on how to offer emotional and emotional support during this time together. When I think about emotional support, I'm really talking about connecting with another person through listening for feelings, listening for, and I guess we could also say responding to feelings. When we're relating to our support team friend, or really to anyone that we're wanting to offer support to, if we will listen for certain feelings and then asking extra questions about that particular feeling, maybe a couple of guidelines here. We'll say one is asking extra question about a feeling that we hear, which shows people that we're listening and we're not only trying to offer answers to whatever it is. And two, not only to ask an extra question, but to be quiet to listen to what that answer might be. And remember that questions are more important than answers. Your questions are more important than answers. A lot of times, this is not what most of us experience from others who are trying to help. They're usually trying to provide the answers. And we're saying on a support team, the most important thing are the questions that you ask in the way that you listen. And so what are we listening for? Maybe that's another way to talk about this. What I would suggest is that there are categories of feelings that if you'll just listen for these categories, you'll be able to identify and ask better questions about those feelings. And so let's keep this real simple. And I'm going to suggest that there are 4 categories. So let's start with number 1. I'll call these sad feelings. Now, people use different words to describe these feelings all the time. Somebody might be down, or they might be depressed. And when they're talking about this particular type of feeling. But sad is one of the types of feelings I want you to listen for. A second one has to do, I call it being mad, which of course has to do with something that someone is angry about, or maybe something that they're frustrated is a word we often use. But angry, frustrated, those are mad types of feelings. A third area has to do with glad, and things that you might hear someone, usually they're excited, and or they are happy about something. That's a category or a type of feeling. we're going to be listening for to ask questions about. And then fourthly, this one is afraid type of feeling that people have. Usually that means that they might use a word like being scared or anxious. And so as you think about what are we listening for and what makes a difference for people, I think that if you can listen for the types of feelings of sad, mad, glad, and afraid, and ask an extra question about those feelings to understand it better. For instance, somebody might be talking about being really down and depressed, and it's just been a really hard day. Instead of trying to fix that feeling and trying to help them feel less sad by telling them not to, because just by telling somebody, don't feel this way, that doesn't really help. Instead, if you can focus on what kind of question can I ask to understand that feeling more. So if a person is talking about being depressed, you might say, it sounds like, this is a hard time for you. And it sounds like a lot of sadness is there. Can you help me understand that more? And you can do this with any of the categories of feelings. And you'll want to use the words, actually. You don't have to use the categories, but that's what you're listening for. But if they're talking about that they were angry or frustrated or whatever the feeling might be, go back and ask an extra question about that as they're telling their story, just so that you can clarify. And probably the most important thing that I want you to remember about feelings is don't try to fix those feelings. Let's put that up here. Don't try to fix the feelings. Instead, I want you to try to listen to whatever the feelings are.